When Mary Thompson sat in her cardiologist's office on that rainy Tuesday morning, she never expected to hear the words that would change everything. "Mrs. Thompson, with your advanced congestive heart failure, I'm afraid you have about 5 years left." And that's if we're lucky. The doctor delivered this news with the detached efficiency that comes from years of giving bad news to patients. Mary sat there stunned as the rain tapped against the window. 5 years. Just 5 years to see her grandchildren grow up. 5 years to spend with Robert, her husband of 42 years. 5 years to live the rest of her life. But here's the thing about Mary, she wasn't ready to accept that verdict. Not even close. You know, it's fascinating how a single moment can completely reshape your life. For Mary, that moment came at age 68, when she received her congestive heart failure diagnosis. Her ejection fraction was just 22%, meaning her heart was pumping less than half as efficiently as it should. Her body was retaining fluid, her breathing was labored, and simple tasks like walking to the mailbox had become nearly impossible. That diagnosis day was 10 years ago. Yes, you heard that right, 10 years ago. And Mary's? Well, she's not only still here with us, but she's thriving in ways her doctors never thought possible. This isn't just an inspiring story about beating the odds. It's a blueprint for how commitment, knowledge, and the right support can literally add years to your life when facing serious heart conditions. Let's talk about what happened when Mary left that doctor's office. Most people might have gone home and started planning for the inevitable. Maybe they'd get their affairs in order, perhaps create a bucket list. Not Mary's. The first thing she did was cry because she's human. The second thing she did was get angry because she wasn't ready to leave this world. And the third thing, she started researching everything she could about congestive heart failure. I remember sitting at my kitchen table that night after Robert had gone to bed, Mary told me. I had this old laptop and I just started Googling. I barely knew how to use the internet back then, but I was determined. I kept thinking there has to be more to this story. There has to be something I can do. That night marked the beginning of Mary's journey, not toward accepting her fate, but toward changing it. And that's what we're going to explore today, the exact steps Mary took to prove her cardiologist wrong and extend her life well beyond those 5 years she was given. The first major turning point came when Mary found a support group for heart failure patients at her local community center. It was there she met Alina, a 75-year-old woman who had been living with congestive heart failure for over 12 years. Meeting Alina changed everything for me, Mary explained. Here was this vibrant woman who had the same condition I did, but she was thriving. She wasn't just surviving, she was living a full life. That's when I realized my doctor's timeline wasn't set in stone. Alina introduced Mary to what would become the first pillar of her recovery: knowledge. Understanding exactly what was happening to her body empowered Mary to take control of her condition, instead of letting it control her. She learned that congestive heart failure isn't a death sentence. It's a condition that can be managed, and in some cases, its progression can be significantly slowed or even partially reversed. Now let's be clear about something: Mary isn't claiming any miracle cures here. Congestive heart failure remains a serious condition. But what Mary discovered was that the prognosis often given to patients represents statistical averages, not individual destinies. And she was determined to be on the positive end of those statistics. The second pillar of Mary's approach was nutrition. This was perhaps the most dramatic change she made to her lifestyle. Before her diagnosis, Mary's diet was what she calls typically American processed foods: high sodium, lots of red meat, and very few vegetables. I grew up in an era where we cooked with lard and thought vegetables were properly prepared only when they were cooked until mushy, Mary laughed. The idea of eating kale or quinoa was completely foreign to me, but Alina had introduced Mary to a nutritionist who specialized in cardiac patients, and this meeting set Mary on a completely new path. She learned about the DASH diet, dietary approaches to stop hypertension, which was specifically designed for people with heart issues. "I'll be honest," Mary said, "the first few weeks were miserable. I missed my salty foods. I craved sugar. I felt like I was being punished. But then something amazing happened. I started to feel better. Not just a little better, but significantly better." Within 3 months of changing her diet, Mary had lost 18 pounds, and more importantly, the fluid retention that had been causing her so much discomfort began to subside. Her breathing improved, and she found she could walk further without getting winded. "The first time I walked all the way around the block without stopping to catch my breath. I came home and just sat on the porch and cried," Mary recalled. "That's when I knew I was taking back control." Now, the third pillar of Mary's approach was perhaps the most surprising, even to her: exercise. When you're struggling to breathe just walking to the bathroom, the idea of intentional exercise seems not just daunting but potentially dangerous. "My first reaction when a leaner suggested I join her for chair yoga was to laugh," Mary said. "I thought she was joking. Exercise seemed impossible with my condition." But Mary's research had shown her that carefully prescribed, appropriate exercise could actually strengthen the heart muscle over time. The key word here is appropriate. This wasn't about running marathons or lifting heavy weights. It was about gentle, consistent movement designed specifically for heart patients. Mary started with chair exercises, simple movements she could do while seated that got her heart rate up slightly without putting too much strain on her system. From there, she progressed to standing exercises while holding onto a chair for support, and eventually to short walks. "I started with walking to the end of my driveway and back," she explained. "The next week I walked to my neighbor's driveway. Each week I added a little more distance. It wasn't fast progress, but it was progress." What Mary discovered, and what research confirms, is that for heart failure patients, the right kind of exercise can actually improve heart function over time. Her body became more efficient at using oxygen, reducing the workload on her heart. Her muscles became stronger, which helped with circulation. And perhaps most importantly, her confidence grew. 6 months after her diagnosis, 6 months that her doctor had essentially written off as the beginning of the end, Mary went back for a follow-up appointment. Her ejection fraction had improved from 22% to 28%. It wasn't dramatic, but it was movement in the right direction. More importantly, her symptoms had improved significantly. The doctor was surprised, but Mary wasn't. She was just getting started. The fourth pillar of Mary's approach involved medication management. Now this is really important. Mary never stopped taking her prescribed medications or went against her doctor's advice. What she did do was become an active participant in her treatment plan rather than a passive recipient. "I started keeping a detailed journal of how I felt each day," Mary explained. "I noted my symptoms, my energy levels, any side effects I experienced. When I went to appointments, I brought this information with me. I asked questions. Lots of questions." This proactive approach led to several adjustments in her medication regimen that better suited her specific needs. Her doctor, initially taken aback by this level of patient involvement, eventually came to appreciate Mary's partnership in her care. "He told me once that most of his patients just take whatever he prescribes without question," Mary said. "But by working together, we found the perfect balance of medications that controlled my symptoms with minimal side effects." This brings us to the fifth pillar: stress management. It might seem obvious that stress is bad for heart conditions, but what many people don't realize is just how directly stress hormones impact heart function, especially in those with heart failure. "I was a worrier my whole life," Mary admitted. "I worried about my kids, my husband, money, the future. You name it, I worried about it. After my diagnosis, I added worrying about my health to that list. It was exhausting." Through her support group, Mary was introduced to meditation and mindfulness practices. She was skeptical at first. It seemed too new age for a practical woman like her. But the research supporting stress reduction for heart patients was compelling. so she gave it a try. I started with just 3 minutes a day of guided meditation using an app on my phone, she said. I felt silly at first, but I kept at it. Eventually, I worked up to 15 minutes each morning. I can't explain exactly how it works, but I know that my blood pressure readings are consistently lower on days when I meditate. Beyond formal meditation, Mary also incorporated other stress reduction techniques into her daily life. She limited her exposure to news that upset her. She practiced saying no to commitments that drained her energy. She spent more time in nature. And perhaps most importantly, she learned to let go of the little things that used to bother her. When you're told you have 5 years to live, it really clarifies what matters and what doesn't, Mary reflected. I stopped worrying about keeping up with the Joneses or whether the house was perfectly clean when company came over. I focused on enjoying the moment instead. The sixth pillar of Mary's approach was perhaps the most powerful: social connection. Numerous studies have shown that strong social ties are associated with better outcomes for heart patients. Isolation and loneliness, on the other hand, can actually worsen heart conditions. Before my diagnosis, I was becoming something of a hermit, Mary admitted. Robert and I had fallen into a routine of just watching TV every night. We rarely saw friends. I had lost touch with many people I used to be close to. Mary's support group became the catalyst for rebuilding her social connections. She not only attended weekly meetings, but also formed friendships that extended beyond those sessions. She reconnected with old friends, joined a book club, and even started volunteering once a week at a local elementary school, reading to first graders. Those kids gave me something to look forward to every week, she smiled. They didn't see me as a sick old lady, they just saw someone who brought them stories. Their energy was infectious. Research supports what Mary discovered intuitively: meaningful social connections can actually trigger positive physiological responses that benefit heart function. Lower stress hormones, improved immune function, and even better sleep all come from strong social ties. By the 2-year mark after her diagnosis, Mary had defied her doctor's expectations. Not only was she still very much alive, but her quality of life had improved dramatically. Her ejection fraction had climbed to 35%, still below normal, but a significant improvement from where she started. Her symptoms had stabilized, and she required fewer hospitalizations for fluid retention. But Mary's journey wasn't without setbacks. During her 3rd year post-diagnosis, she developed pneumonia, which put tremendous strain on her already compromised heart. She spent 9 days in the hospital, and for a while, it seemed like her doctor's initial prognosis might prove correct after all. That was a scary time, Mary acknowledged. I remember lying in that hospital bed, listening to the beeping of the monitors and thinking, is this it? Is this where my story ends? But it wasn't the end. Mary recovered, although the pneumonia did cause some additional damage to her heart. Her ejection fraction dropped back to 30%, and she had to scale back some of her activities temporarily. This experience taught her the 7th pillar of her approach: resilience and adaptability. I learned that this journey isn't a straight line, Mary explained. There are good days and bad days. Sometimes there are good months followed by really tough months. The key is to adapt your approach without abandoning it altogether. After her hospitalization, Mary had to modify her exercise routine. She temporarily returned to chair exercises until she regained her strength. She became even more vigilant about avoiding people with colds or flu. And she worked with her doctor to adjust her medications to address her new baseline. But she didn't give up. She didn't surrender to the diagnosis. She adapted and continued moving forward. The 8th pillar of Mary's approach involved something many heart patients overlook: sleep quality. Poor sleep doesn't just leave you tired, it actually puts additional strain on the heart and can worsen heart failure symptoms. I used to think of sleep as a luxury, Mary said. Something you could skimp on if necessary. Now I protect my sleep time like it's gold, Because for my heart it is. Mary worked with her doctor to address sleep apnea, a condition common in heart failure patients that causes breathing interruptions during sleep. She established a consistent sleep schedule, created a bedtime routine that helped her wind down, and made modifications to her bedroom environment to promote better rest. Getting quality sleep made a huge difference in my daytime energy levels, she noted. And my heart rate variability improved, which my cardiologist said was a very positive sign. The ninth pillar, and this might surprise you, was purpose. Having a reason to get up in the morning, a sense that your life has meaning and importance, turns out to be incredibly powerful medicine. After my diagnosis, I went through a period of thinking, what's the point? Mary recalled. If I only had a few years left, why bother trying new things or making long-term plans? But that thinking just led to depression, which made my symptoms worse. Mary found her purpose in becoming an advocate for other heart patients. She started a blog sharing her journey and the strategies that were helping her. She became a mentor to newly diagnosed patients in her support group. And she worked with her local hospital to improve their patient education materials for heart failure. Helping others gave me a reason to keep learning, to keep fighting, to keep showing up, Mary said. On days when I might have been tempted to skip my walk or eat something I shouldn't, knowing that others were looking to me for inspiration kept me on track. 5 years after her diagnosis, the point at which her doctor had essentially written her off, Mary celebrated with a heart-healthy dinner party for all the people who had supported her journey. Her cardiologist was among the invited guests. He actually apologized to me that night, Mary recalled with a smile. He said he'd been trained to give statistical averages, but that I had taught him never to underestimate a determined patient. That meant a lot to me. Today, 10 years after being told she had 5 years to live, Mary continues to defy expectations. Her heart condition is still serious. Congestive heart failure doesn't go away, but she has learned to live well despite it. Her ejection fraction hovers around 38%, still below normal but nearly double what it was at diagnosis. She takes her medications faithfully, maintains her heart-healthy lifestyle, and continues to be an inspiration to others facing similar challenges. I don't know how many more years I have, Mary said reflectively. None of us do, really. But I do know that these past 10 years have been some of the most meaningful of my life precisely because I had to fight for them. I had to be intentional about how I lived each day. Mary's story isn't about denying medical reality or promising miracle cures. Congestive heart failure remains a serious, chronic condition that requires proper medical management. What her journey demonstrates is the remarkable difference that lifestyle changes, knowledge, community support, and personal determination can make in the trajectory of heart disease. For anyone listening who has received a similar diagnosis or loves someone who has, Mary wants you to know this: statistics are just numbers. They reflect averages, not individuals. Your story is still being written, and you have more influence over the narrative than you might think. The most important thing I learned, Mary told me as we concluded our conversation, is that heart failure is not just about the heart in your chest. It's about how you approach each day, the people you surround yourself with, the knowledge you arm yourself with, and the choices you make. These things won't cure heart failure, but they can help you live well despite it, if you're facing heart health challenges or supporting someone who is. Remember Mary's 9 pillars: knowledge, nutrition, appropriate exercise, medication management, stress reduction, social connection, resilience and adaptability, quality sleep, and purpose. Together, these approaches created a framework that allowed Mary to reclaim her life from a devastating diagnosis. Heart health isn't just about surviving. It's about thriving for as long as possible with the best quality of life possible. Mary's journey from that rainy day in her cardiologist's office to where she is today, active, engaged, and very much alive, shows us what's possible when we refuse to accept limiting beliefs about what our futures hold. If Mary's story resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, your heart health journey is unique to you. Work closely with your healthcare providers, seek out knowledge and support, and never underestimate the power of your daily choices to shape your future. This is Heart Health Senior, reminding you that every heartbeat is precious, and how we care for our hearts can make all the difference in how many of those precious beats we get to experience. Thank you for listening to Mary's remarkable journey of proving her cardiologist wrong not through denial but through determination, knowledge, and heart-healthy living.